All right. Good to see you. I also want to start by thanking all the organizers of the event, Social Science Week, the Peace Center, the theater, Professor Ford, and all the other unsung heroes. So, economics. Thomas Carlyle called economics the dismal science. So, what do we have to offer about? Let me show you a cartoon. Yeah, so you need to have really and very both of them so that it kind of cuts through. And Thorndecker, that's what we're going to be doing. So we're going to be making some thorns. Peace is not one of the jargons of economics, but we have some central concept in economics which could cover peace, and that is the idea of utility. So utility here is not power and gas and water and all that stuff. You might have heard of utilitarians, right, in ethics. It kind of comes close to it. So if you want a more easier translation for utility, it would be satisfaction, or if you want, happiness, right? So we use this concept of utility to talk about anything that incorporates into our well-being. And part of that could be peace. And when we say peace, it could be inner peace, individual peace, or external peace at the social level. So all of that could be incorporated into this concept of utility. Now, if you go around and ask people, what is something that could give you more satisfaction? What do you think most people are going to say? Money, right? Now, and that's why we're always just running like a hamster, right? So there's this idea that income and happiness or utility are correlated, right? So let's watch a little clip here that kind of investigates that.
One of the most important things we can do when it comes to making smart decisions about money is learn to ask questions. And some of the questions we need to ask ourselves are about fundamental assumptions that we've made. And one of those assumptions that we've made is that somehow our income, or our net worth even, and happiness are correlated. That as we have more money, we will be happier. Right? That's one of the assumptions we've made. And we've also heard the opposite, that money can't buy happiness. Well, it turns out both are true. You know, as your income rises to a certain point, you indeed are happier. You know, we need to meet basic needs. I promise you, you'll be happier if you can afford certain things. And those needs vary by person to person. But as we meet certain needs, as we have the money to meet certain needs, we will be happier. But the research shows that at a certain level for all of us, that starts to level off. You know, sure, our happiness will increase a little bit as our income goes up, but it really starts to level off. And I think the reason this is so important for us to understand is that if we're going to make good decisions about money, if we're going to sort of get alignment between the things that we really want and our use of money, if we're going to be happy about our relationship with money, we have to start asking ourselves, why are we doing these things? We have to start understanding that questioning these fundamental assumptions, like the relationship between income and happiness, will be very important for our financial futures.
That kind of connects to Socrates by way of questioning, if you notice. So, about why is it that this curve levels off? And there's a lot of studies over the years saying this. Why is it that it levels off? There are a whole series of explanations for it. And there is this article that you can Google it. It's available online. Does money buy happiness? It doesn't have any math. It doesn't have any graphs, but it has a lot of good discussions. And those of you who are in Professor Freud's class got the article. So it kind of explores some of the things that contribute to happiness and some of the things that don't. So one of the things that I'm going to focus here, because of a limited time, is the idea of relative income. All right. So let's do a thought experiment. All right. So I need your imaginations. It's not realistic, but it's insightful. Let's say you go home today, and over the weekend, you get a message, you get a mail from the Peace Center, which says that we had a fundraiser for the Peace Center, and since you attended the Friday session, your name was entered into the draw, and it has been picked. Okay? And you have won a Segway. You guys know what's a Segway? Yeah. So that's the older version of it. The newer ones are tighter. So now, if you haven't tried a Segway, it's amazing. You guys are gonna love it. This is not a promotion for Segway, by the way. They don't pay me. We don't. So let's say they deliver it to your home and you try it and you just love it, right? You just love the Segway. So you're gonna be like, yay. So that's gonna give you a lot of happiness or utility, right? So next week, you come to college and you're so jubilant and happy with your stupid Segway. And you see your friend, and the first thing you tell them is, guess what happened, guess what happened, blah, blah, blah. You just tell them the story, right? And they look back at you and say, well, actually my name was also picked, and I won a BMW. And your other friend turns back and says, oh, yeah, and I also won a Jaguar. We're talking real cars here, not American cars. Sorry. So now, before long, you realize that everyone has won a car. Now, pause here for a moment. How are you going to feel? What's going to happen to your initial happiness to this mania? Are you going to be as happy as last night? Maybe not. Maybe you're going to be like this guy. Or maybe this guy. Now, just pause for a moment. Nothing happened to you, right? You didn't lose anything. You still have your Segway. Why should you be any less happy than the night before? So here's actually a good point to pause and think, because that's really what governs it. That's really what governs our entire life. So a short little observation here is, as long as you compare yourself to anyone, you have the right to everything except peace, right? And you can think about that. So that's kind of like a profound observation just by this simple thought experiment. So now when we talk about utility in economics, we have this thing called the utility function. So we have these mathematical formulas and models which are useful in giving us a framework. So when we talk about utility, in the most simplest form of it, we can present it like this, right? So U here stands for utility, C is consumption, me means my consumption. It's like my consumption. So my satisfaction, and this is like my consumption. Does anyone know what F stands for? Function. So can somebody put this into a sentence? How do you read this? My utility, yeah. My level of satisfaction depends on my level of consumption, right? That's what it's saying, right? That's really that's the notation. This is the simplest form. Now, hang on. We just did a thought experiment where we found that my satisfaction also depends on other people's consumption, right? That's what we just found out. So we can actually augment this formula to include the consumption of others, right? So here's how it works. If my consumption goes up, what happens to my utility? It should go up, right? If others' consumption goes up, what would happen? Based on our thought experiment, it would go down, right? So that's what we just found out. So we can put these plus and minus signs over, which would show that my consumption has a positive effect on my utility or satisfaction, and other people's consumption has a negative effect. This is based on the idea that we constantly compare ourselves to our peers and neighbors. By the way, we tend to compare ourselves with people who are like us. You don't really compare yourself with people of your parents' generation, for instance. If they have a BMW, well, like, you don't really get upset with them. More formally, we can use this notation. So those of you who have done calculus would know that this is a derivative of utility with respect to my consumption. This is a curly d. It's curly because it's a partial derivative. So this one's positive, so there's a positive effect. This one's negative, there's a negative effect. Why am I showing you this? Well, some of you have taken science, so this kind of makes it more meaningful to you. That's a naive explanation. The real explanation is that I'm showing you this just to show off. But that gives me utility, right? So those of you who are allergic to math, you don't need to worry about this mist at the bottom. Just take the colorful stuff at the top. That's enough really for you. That's the gist of it. Let's do our thought experiment one more time with a little modification. So you go home, and over the weekend you receive the message that you won the Segway and you're happy. And then the next day you learn that someone that you really, really love, someone that you really care about, they have won the car. How are you going to feel? Are you going to be happy or upset? Probably you're not going to be so upset. If you really love them, if you really care about them, if the person is someone that you care about, then it's going to be a little bit different. So we can complete our utility function by adding another factor. So we have me in there, we have others, these are like strangers, and we have friends. So friends are anyone that you love. It could be family, whatever, right? And if you want to do the signs, we can have positive, negative, and positive. So there are these elements which increase your satisfaction, and one element that would decrease your satisfaction, right? This is a general framework for making sense of how our satisfaction works, and part of our satisfaction would be our peace. Now, notice that economics doesn't tell us anything about who is me, who is the other, and who is the friends. Those things are not defined in economics. Economics just gives us the framework to make sense of it, right? Those things, me, other, and friends, should be defined elsewhere. Those things are defined by our worldviews and our values. And our worldviews and values are shaped by what is discussed in psychology, religion, and philosophy, right? Economics gives us the framework to think about it. Now, here's the thing. Think about all the great people in history. Think about all the philanthropists. Think about the sages and the saints who sacrificed themselves for the well-being of others. They also had a utility function, but the difference there was that their definitions of me, other, and friend was different. So for them, probably almost nobody was in the category of other. Everybody was either a friend or part of themselves. So that's really what makes a difference. So you can see the model is malleable enough to be able to accommodate all those possible behavior. So let's look at a quote here, which is kind of profound. How selfish soever man may be supposed, there are evidently some principles in his nature which interest him in the fortune of others and render their happiness necessary to him, though he derives nothing from it except the pleasure of seeing it. That's kind of cool. For this sentiment, like all other original passions of human nature, is by no means confined to the virtuous and humane, though they perhaps may feel it with the most exquisite sensibility. The greatest ruffians, ruffian meaning hooligan, the most hardened violators of the laws of society is not altogether without it. So everyone has that element of altruism. Can anybody guess who the speaker is? Probably you wouldn't be able to guess. This is one of the greatest moral philosophers of history, who also happens to be the father of modern economics, Adam Smith. So that's actually the very first statement that he said in his first book, The Theory of Moral Sentiments. One other point to leave you with is, we don't control the utility functions of others. It might be a bit too ambitious to say, okay, we're going to bring peace to the world. But something that we do control is our own utility function. Something that we do control is our own definitions of self and other. And as much as we control it, we have responsibility over it, right? So this is really homework for life, to think about what is my definition of self and other, and how does that affect my sense of utility, and perhaps how does it affect other people's sense of utility. So the contribution of philosophy, psychology, and religion is to help us revise our definitions of the self and the other in a way that we may develop greater peace for ourselves and for others.